some of us, some women, may not necessarily feel like or have the desire that they once had because there's so many other responsibilities that they're taking on within the home. Tracy, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I think that sometimes it becomes a convenient excuse. I
Mm.
mean, I think it becomes a convenient excuse, but I also think that depending on where you are in life, and when you talk about, Greg talked about your mental health and your physical health and your sexual health. If you're in a space where you're by for women, like our bodies are changing and you're going through something, and you don't quite understand what's going on and how you're feeling and why you're not responding. It's like we also have to be really in tune to our bodies to understand where we are in that continuum of sexual interest, because it gets to a point where sometimes we even don't really know what's going on. And
Mhm.
yeah, it becomes an excuse. Well, I'm tired, and not to say, I'm straddling the fence, because there are times when you are legitimately tired, but there's other times when you don't know what's going on and you use that as the excuse for not being intimate with your partner. But then I also want to ask, like, either Greg or Stacey, if they think about this, like when you're talking about your mental health, your sexual health, and your physical health, do men understand that women go through their own menopausal stuff, other stuff? So at times, we're not, it's not that we're not interested in you, we're just not physically, mentally up for it. We just can't arrive at the occasion. Do men talk about that, or do they understand that?
I love that question because I was going to get to that, Tracy, because
Oh,
I
I'm
don't think
sorry.
they get. No, no, no. I'm glad you brought it up. I'm absolutely glad you brought it up because I don't think they get that. Like they don't get why we tend to, oh, I'm tired. Oh, and it comes with our hormones and our aging and our, you know what I mean? And so they're not as
Mm-hmm.
understanding because I don't think people talk about it enough. Greg, can you speak to that? And then Stacey, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I agree with you and Tracy that I guess a woman's psychological well-being, if I can call it that, where she is in the continuum. I don't know if there's something that's, front and center with regard to why is she not accepting my advances? The first thing I think of is not that, she's just not in that mental state. It could be, again, I mentioned ego earlier, right? And unfortunately, we have, men have an ego that needs to be stroked on occasion. But when we're not connecting, I don't think of that. But what I hear you all saying is, I mean, the question earlier was that, men, we have our maladies, women have their maladies. It's a part of the human condition, right? Mm-hmm. So
Mm-hmm.
if and when, for lack of a better phrase, it's that time of the month and the man does not feel like performing, then just accept it as just being part of, I mean, it could be the aging process, right? I was going to ask a little later. I'm not a scholar, but I did read somewhere that Noah was having kids when he was like 862. I mean, I think that's in the Old Testament, right?
Well, so men in the Bible were and women were bearing children at a very, very old age.
At 400, yeah.
So how did they? I mean, that's not my thing, but how did they offset all those things 2,000 years ago, and we can't do it today?
They had Jesus. They had
Jesus.
And not that we don't have them, but you know what I find, and this is a horse of a different color, but you know what I find convenient, Greg, is that you pull religion out your butt.
I'm saying you either down with it or you're not. All right, it's not. It shouldn't be a la carte. I'm gonna take a scoopful of this, and I'm not gonna take none of that, right? Yes, so anyway, that's a different podcast.
That's a different podcast.
Stacey, what are your thoughts on women's, health issues or women's hormonal issues that could prevent them from having the sex drive, which may be why you date younger women?
Yeah, he's got a ceiling. Remember.
Yeah.
Putting that out there, right? Okay.
Is
I
that
mean,
what you have it?
I agree with it, but it's a slippery slope because it's really just a hard conversation to have between partners because we have our egos
Absolutely.
Mhm,
and
absolutely.
too, so it's kind of a hard we really don't discuss it with each other at
Mm,
all,
Mm.
and we'll just sit back and be like, okay, well, shit, she don't want to do it, fuck it, all right.
yeah, yeah,
All
absolutely.
right,
So when you say you don't discuss it, you don't discuss it with the women and or you don't discuss it among your men friends.
well, of course we discuss with our men friends, but
Oh, okay.
normally you don't have that conversation with your partner because
Mm,
it's kind of awkward,
mm-hmm.
Mm.
and then that can lead to another major discussion, and then it can lead to something else. It's
Yes.
not really pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
normally you might just go and be like, all right, well, I'm just gonna, all right. But then after a while, it's like, wait a minute, it's been a week,
Yep. Yep.
it's been 2 weeks, we haven't been intimate. And then you're like, yo, what's going on?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
With our ego, we might say like, yo, something must be up.
Mm-hmm.
Just like a woman, if she's not being satisfied, be honest. First thing she's gonna think is you messing around or
Yes.
you're somebody else
Yes.
because you're not. I'm laying in this bed and you don't touch me. You go to sleep. You wake up. You go to work. You come home. You eat. You go to sleep, and it becomes a routine.
Yes. Yes.
And then
That's
also,
true.
women, right? They don't do the same things they did in the beginning to keep you. They get complacent, and they come to bed with the scarves on their head.
Oh, there we go.
It's true. Scarves on their head, the big draws, nothing sexy.
Not the big draws. Not
Yeah,
the pants.
sexy. And it's like, and when it's like that, it becomes a routine. Like, oh boy,
Yeah.
let me roll over.
Yeah.
All right,
Is it your birthday?
hurry up, finish. You done? Good night.
Yeah, yeah. I feel you, Stace. I mean, I agree with that. As women, we do tend to do that because I think a lot of times it could be our hormones, or it could just be that we're just so freaking tired from all the things we have to do in a day. And I know men in particular can struggle terribly with their perceived inability to please their mate if they think that she's not drawn to it, or she doesn't want to do it because he's not pleasing her. And I say perceived inability because there's so many ways to please your mate and be intimate with your partner that doesn't always involve direct intercourse. And I don't think people explore that enough. I mean, do you agree that there are so many other ways? I think if, like, to your point, Stacey, when people don't talk about it and don't have these conversations within the relationship, they don't feel comfortable doing that. They don't understand that there's so many things that we can work through together if we just talk about it, if we communicate it. But it's hard for somebody to tell you, I don't know how to tell you this, but I'm having trouble now getting an erection. Can you imagine how hard that must be for a man to have that conversation with his mate, that I struggle to get an erection? And it's just, I mean, do you agree with that, Greg and Stacey, that that's a difficult thing for a man to come out of his mouth with to his mate?
Oh, no doubt it is. And then sometimes the woman will think then, like, what am I doing wrong?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not sexy no more. You don't like me no more. And they start to blame themselves.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times it's not them. Like you said, a man can just have a look, got a problem.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
But that's a tough conversation to have.
It's very tough. Greg, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I agree with you, Stacey, but whether you have the conversation or not, it's obvious in the bed what the problem is, that the man is not performing. But what I would push back on a little bit is, you've couched a man's ability to perform or inability to perform directly to, medical issues, this, that, or the other.
Here we go. Here we go, G Squad. We're gonna come for you. Go ahead, brother, because we coming for you. Go ahead.
I think a big part of that is the psychology, right? I mean, because that same dude has no problem performing with his side piece. So the fact that he's not performing with you is not solely due to any inability on his part. It could be the psychology associated with you stacking the groceries in the cupboard the same way for 25 years. So here we are now, so
I agree. But the thing about that is, he probably can perform with the side piece because he's only got to do it once in a while because he's not in the bed with her every single night. He's with you every single night. He's not having to discuss the mortgage with the side piece. He doesn't have to discuss the kids and the homework and the fact that somebody got detention and the fact that, the transmission needs to be replaced and the air conditioner's not working and all those things that people who share a life have to discuss. Those aren't important.
That was a busted answer, Greg. I'm sorry. I'm gonna call you out on that.
Okay,
that's just not.
So you point, Greg. That's the psychology.
It's the psychology. Well, now I didn't say it was right or wrong.
Right.
I'm saying it is the psychology. I'm not justifying people having side pieces. I'm just saying in a lot of instances, they don't have problems performing for their side pieces. And to your point, Gail, you're right. When you're in a marriage, building a relationship and a life, you got a big bag of rocks you're carrying around.
Right.
And when you're hanging with that side piece, you don't have any of those.
Exactly. It's all fun.
Yeah, that's right. But dude might be, rock hard with her, as opposed to when he's at the crib, he's got all those distractions that preclude him from having an erection. Is my point. Again, I'm not saying it's right, Tracy. I'm just saying, it happens.
Well, but I don't disagree with you to an extent. I mean, I can see where it is in for a man or for a woman that when there is another person involved, it's very easy to do a whole lot of things because you have no sense of attachment or definition to what it is you're doing. Unless you're just completely define the relationship. But if you're bored at home or stressed out at home, then there's a whole lot of stuff that's not getting done, not only sexually, but it's communication, the bills aren't being paid. But then I kind of wanted to go back and say, well, if my partner and I'm in a relationship with you and you're having an issue, if it's medically or non-medically, then I think that we should be an adult enough to talk about it and discover what's wrong, because it could be something that's fixable or maybe not. It could be just aging that we need to look at things a little differently.
Right.
But the reality is most folks, in light of the fact that divorce is like 62% in this country, something like that. I don't know what the latest number is. Most folks, Tracy, are not equipped with the ability to have those hard discussions, which I call self-medication, to sit down and have them devoid of emotion where we actually make progress. And then we can continue to be friends and move on. Stacey mentioned ego a little earlier. For men, a lot of it's got to do with ego. And the reality is you can only cover so much ground when you're talking about some of these hard conversations with your mate and actually see progress, because we aren't psychologists, right? We do the best we can in some cases, but most people aren't equipped to do that.
Right.
I totally agree.
I want to back up a little bit to your point, Greg, when you talked about how, sometimes a man can't, he may not be able to perform with his wife, or with his girlfriend, but he can perform with his side piece. I differ a little bit because in my experience, men will screw a hole in the ground if he has the right oil. So I think it's usually more of a medical situation.